They say storms have a way of finding the broken, of shaking loose what we tried to bury. They rip away our carefully crafted stories and leave us exposed, vulnerable, raw. Sometimes they knock us off our feet, steal our breath and force us to confront the wreckage of our past. What choice do we have but to pick ourselves up, brush ourselves off and start again? To find beauty in the wreckage and strength in the struggle. And on one such night, the sky tore open. Rain lashed against windows and tore down shutters. Wind rattled the panes. Lightning split the darkness and shook the very foundations of the cottage until something small, fragile, fell from the wreckage of the storm. A sparrow, drenched and battered, landed at Eleanor's doorstep, barely alive. She could have turned away. The elements had picked this place clean. Why offer her shelter now? Instead, she stepped out into the raging storm, wrapped the little bird in an old towel and brought it inside. Her cottage wasn't much to look at, just like her. 40 years ago, it had been filled with laughter, the chatter of children, the scent of baking bread. But that was before the fire took everything. Before the man she loved left her, taking her dreams with him. She huddled by the dying embers of the hearth, the wind screaming like a banshee outside, the sparrow trembling in her hands, its tiny chest heaving, its eyes staring sightlessly at the gloom. She knew this feeling, this cold, hopeless terror that threatened to consume. Eleanor whispered, "You probably won't make it through the night." She laid the bird on a scrap of cloth beside the hearth, and sleep pulled her into its dark embrace. Somewhere before dawn, the sparrow's eyes opened. Sunlight slanted through the window, painting stripes of gold on the floor. Eleanor woke to the insistent chirping. Her instincts told her to turn away, to pretend she hadn't heard. After all, what did it matter? The storm had passed and life went on. But something stirred within her, something long dormant. Perhaps it was the memory of a child's laughter echoing in the silence of those empty rooms, or maybe it was just the glint of sunlight on a fallen leaf outside. Whatever the reason, she told herself it was just survival. But the truth, the bird was saving her. Days passed. The storm was over, but the sun streamed through the window as Eleanor fed the sparrow one drop of sugar water at a time, one prayer she didn't think she believed in, one song she no longer thought she could sing. The bird grew stronger, fluttering its wings, hopping around her cottage, exploring the world with fearless abandon. With each passing day, Eleanor found herself smiling more, laughing a little louder, dancing a jig when the moon was full. For the first time in a long time, she felt alive. The sparrow had come to her in her darkest hour and shown her the light. One morning, the sparrow was strong enough to take flight. Eleanor opened the window wide and watched it soar into the boundless expanse above. She wanted to join it, to feel the wind beneath her own wings as she danced with the clouds. But she was rooted to the ground, anchored by the weight of her past. Just as the sparrow swooped low, ready to land on her outstretched finger, a deep voice shattered the quiet. "Luke, a warm, broken wing." He gestured towards the bird, his gaze kind. Eleanor followed his eyes to the sparrow, which hopped closer, unafraid. Eleanor realized it was hurt, its wing bent at an unnatural angle. She knelt down, her touch gentle. "Eleanor, yeah. I don't know if it'll ever fly again." Luca sat beside her, his presence a soothing balm on her raw nerves. With quiet patience, he carved a splint from a nearby branch. His hands were rough, his touch firm, his gaze unwavering. And for the first time in years, Eleanor wasn't alone. The days that followed were filled with the soft patter of tiny feet and the quiet rustle of feathers. Luca would visit often, bringing food and wood for the fire and sharing stories of his life beyond the hills. In return, Eleanor shared her dreams, the ones she'd buried deep under the weight of her grief. As the weeks turned into months, the cottage echoed with laughter once more. The sparrow hopped around them, its spirit unbroken. Eleanor's heart soared with it. One morning, Luca was whittling a piece of wood when the sparrow landed on his shoulder. Luca looked up, a smile gracing his lips. Luca soft, from a distance, maybe it chooses to stay. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place within Eleanor. Love wasn't just about passion and romance. It was about companionship, trust and loyalty. It was about finding solace in another's presence and strength in their absence. Something inside her shifted, and she realized she had found all of these things with Luca and the little bird. But love is never safe. And just as Eleanor began to hope, her past came knocking. Her heart stuttered in her chest. Memories flooded back, sharp and painful as shards of glass. It was the man who broke her heart, the one she'd loved and lost. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now held only pity. His touch, once tender, now felt like a branding iron searing her skin. He spoke of second chances and whispered apologies. He begged for forgiveness and promised forever. Eleanor recoiled, her walls crumbling around her. She wanted to believe him, to let him in, but she couldn't. Not like this. The past loomed large, casting a shadow over her newfound happiness. She retreated into herself, pushing away Luca and the little bird, afraid to hope, afraid to love. As the storm raged outside, Eleanor paced her cottage, the man's words echoing in her ears. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was meant to be with him. But why after all this time? Hadn't he moved on? Didn't he have someone else? Was he just lonely? Regret gnawed at her. Was she selfish for not giving him a chance? The wind screamed like a banshee, mirroring the turmoil in her soul. Suddenly, the window burst open and the sparrow flew in, landing on the table. It chirped frantically, as if urging her to do something. Eleanor felt a surge of protectiveness. Where had it gone? Had it been hurt? Was it in danger? She rushed to the window and peered outside. The storm had returned, and this time the rain lashed down with even more ferocity. The trees swayed dangerously, their branches clawing at the sky. Eleanor's heart raced. She had to get to Luca. The thought of him being out in this weather filled her with dread. She threw on a coat and stepped outside, ignoring the stinging rain. As she ran through the downpour, branches ripped at her clothes and mud caked her skin. But she didn't care. She had to get to Luca. When she finally reached his porch, shaking and soaked to the bone, Eleanor pounded on the door. She could hear Luca inside, talking quietly to someone. The door opened, and he stood there, his face etched with concern. Seeing her state, his eyes widened. Luca softly, "Eleanor, what are you doing out here?" She pointed to the tree swaying precariously above his head. Before he could react, the tree snapped, crashing down onto his porch and pinning him to the ground. Panic surged through Eleanor. She stumbled back, her mind reeling. What should she do? How could she help him? Then she saw it, the little bird, shaking, half buried in the mud. With newfound determination, Eleanor scrambled to free the sparrow. Its tiny heart was already stopped beating. But something inside her snapped. She began performing mouth-to-nose resuscitation. Time seemed to stand still as she fought to bring the bird back to life. And then, miraculously, its chest rose and fell. With a gasp, the sparrow was alive. Overwhelmed with relief, Eleanor cradled the bird close. Suddenly, she heard a familiar sound, the unmistakable chirp of the sparrow. Looking up, she saw it perched on a nearby fence post, chirping insistently. Understanding dawned on her. The sparrow had been trying to warn her, to tell her that Luca was in danger. With renewed urgency, Eleanor rushed to his side. Kneeling beside him, she began digging with all her might. Dirt flew everywhere as she dug frantically. Finally, she reached Luca's hand and pulled him free from the wreckage. Relief washed over her as he coughed and sputtered, his eyes fluttering open. As the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a warm glow on the wet landscape, Eleanor cradled Luca close, his head resting on her shoulder. Their clothes were torn, their bodies bruised, but their spirits were unbroken. Around them, the wreckage of the storm lay scattered, but so did the seeds of their love, nurtured by the rain, ready to grow. One morning, the sparrow flew back to Eleanor's shoulder, nuzzling her neck. Eleanor smiled, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor soft, you stayed, and maybe that's what love really is, not a cage. Not fear of losing, but the choice again and again to stay.